Today we're going to have a closer look at my Norwegian manufactured radio, Radionette Kurer Transi. I think the date for the radio is approximately about 1958, 57, round about there. It was my late grandmother's radio, purchased by my uncle, who was a radio technician, and these radios were imported into our country and then partly assembled. I think the cases and the inner parts were just separated, and they just had to screw it together and sold a few bits and pieces. It's quite an interesting radio. It has a wooden case and it's covered in a sort of leathery cloth, which was sort of common for the period. Note the funny gold knobs, and there's some other gold bits and pieces, gold braiding around the edge, which was also popular at that time. Inside the radio, inside the wooden case, it has a rather interesting loop antenna for AM. Instead of the normal ferrite rod, it uses a loop antenna. It also has very good tone from a cast aluminium C's speaker. I'll turn the radio on. Let's hope we don't get too much music.
De 5 was 1 tot by 5 en ek dink
First lady, something special? You can be pretty clueless. So, let me spell it out for you. www.firstladydiamonds.com. With just a few clicks, you can buy her the perfect pair of earrings, a special pendant, or her dream diamond ring, with free shipping anywhere.
Okay, so you can get a good idea of the tone there. It has long wave, the marine band, AM, normal medium wave in other words, and then the shortwave band runs from about, I think it's about 5 to about 19 megahertz. And the marine band does the bottom end from, say, 2 to about 5. So that's the coverage of the radio. It has a tone control over here, which just increases the treble, decreases the treble a bit. And rather an unusual feature, if you push these two buttons down together like that, you can use it as a kind of a PA. Let's turn it round at the back. One interesting thing before I forget, here at the bottom of the radio, it's upside down now for that. Let's just swing it around, fairly heavy with these older radios because there was quite a bit of staining at the bottom there on the radio, unfortunately. I think my younger children got hold of it at some stage and used to play with it. You can notice the price at the bottom. It's in kroner, which is the old currency before the euro, 4.58, and the label just says you can put your stamp there, the shop who sells it, whoever the marketer is, and then I think that's the sales tax over there. So it's still got the price on it from way back in those days, quite amazingly. I've just marked the back here, antenna, so I know that that's the connector to connect your antenna to. The other one is for if you use it as a kind of a PA system, which hardly got the volume for that, but anyway, let's open the back. You can have a look inside. So as you can see, here's the C's cast aluminium speaker. This is an aluminium casting, which gives it a nice tone. It takes 5 D-cell batteries, and lots of these older-fashioned tuning caps that they had here for setting up the tuning of the various bands. So when you align the radio, you use it, and there are more of them down the bottom here, of course, as well. Point-to-point wiring. And over here, you won't be able to see it too easily, is one of the transistors, the black OC type transistors, the very early transistors, which are basically, I think they're germanium transistors, if I remember correctly. Here's the tuning capacitor, the variable tuning capacitor, and it has 2 gears that are spring-loaded against one another to take out any backlash. This is the dial cord, original dial cord. I had to replace the dial cord in it because it broke, and so I just kept a sample of it in there in case I ever find a suitable cord. I've used sort of kite cord in here. It's a little bit thicker, so it makes the tuning a bit stiff. And inside here, if we get a little bit closer, let's just try and move this up a bit here, see if we can see it. Inside the radio, over here, this is the loop antenna which runs all the way around the radio onto the other side of the radio over here as well. So that's the loop antenna. And it does work quite well on shortwave. I won't put it onto shortwave now because I've got an antenna attached. I don't quite know whether it uses that loop as well for shortwave. I don't think so. I think you have to have an external antenna on here. I don't think it'll really pick up anything on shortwave. You go right down to the end of the band to try and find. I don't think we're gonna find anything without an antenna attached. No, okay. So I think I have somewhere got another video of the radio where I do use it on shortwave. Otherwise, I'll make one. There's a little mark up here at the top there. 746 or 748, I can't quite read it. That was my old, let's have a look at it a bit closer, ZS1748. That was my original shortwave listener's call sign back in the 70s, when this was one of the first shortwave radios that I had after my valve, well, the first transistorized one after my valve radio. Anyway, that's rather long waffle from me. So I hope you found it interesting. Just one short thing before I go. There's rather a flea bitten or fish moth bitten circuit diagram on the back. I do have a photocopy of it before it got so destroyed by the fish moths. And that gives you, if you want to redo the alignment on the radio, there's all the trimmer capacitors with numbers on them and all that, and the references over here. So that does come in quite handy, but it still works perfectly after all these years. Okay, thanks very much for bearing with me.